Do you think that it's acceptable that in 2020 we need to create an hashtag saying that Black Lives Matter? In this video, I will try to explain how we can avoid prejudice and discrimination. How many of you have used dating apps and created an idea of the person from just a photo? This happens because we are obliged to categorize in order to make our life easier. So instead of analyzing all the details, we use some schemes that make us think quickly and most of the time effectively. But when these schemes are applied to a group of people, well, then they call stereotypes. So the stereotypes about British, Italians, Africans, homosexual, women, etc. Be careful, because as we said, the schemes tend to simplify. So we lose a lot of information, which is why the schemes are defined as inaccurate and inflexible. In fact, think of stereotypes about British people. It can mean everything and nothing. However, as we said, the stereotypes are schemes and they are necessary. But when these stereotypes cause emotions, positive or negative, or attitudes, well, then they call prejudice. While all those unjustified and harmful behaviors, including insults toward a person who is a part of another group, well, then they call discriminations. I give you an example that somehow involved everyone. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was very common to associate the coronavirus with the Chinese population. So look at these examples. As you can imagine, now they can involve all the nationalities. But you know that we can create a prejudice starting from insignificant details in less than half an hour. In 1960, in USA, a teacher created prejudice based on the color of the children's eyes. How? Well, telling the children in her class that the best were only those with blue eyes. Immediately, these children felt superior and imposed punishments on dark-eyed children, who instead were feeling depressed and frustrated. However, the next day, the teacher reversed the situation, saying that she was wrong because actually the best children were those with the dark eyes. Well, do you know what happened? That the dark-eyed children took revenge. At the end of the experiment, the teacher explained that the sad feeling they felt was the same as black people feel every day in USA. The interesting thing about this experiment is that years later, these children showed less prejudice and more sensitivity towards discrimination. But how many times have you heard, "I'm not racist, but," or "everyone in your race is like that, but you are different"? This happens because our stereotypes are inflexible, and if they are questioned, we prefer to see the situation as an exception. In fact, look at this lady holding her bag. Because of her negative stereotypes, she thinks that the man could steal it from her. But once she finds out that the man of Maghrebi origin was a doctor, well, then he will be an exception. Another aspect that shouldn't be underestimated is the fact that minorities are paradoxically the most visible. If there are 100 people dressed in black and one in pink, who is gonna grab your attention? In fact, if we read a newspaper where it's written that a person of African origin, for example, robbed a bank, it's easy to associate that illegal behavior with the fact that he belongs to that particular ethnic group. However, if the person robbing a bank has our same ethnicity, then our brain must look for another solution. But you know that if you have a bias, well, that may turn out to be true. There is a psychological effect called self-fulfilling prophecy, which shows that if we expect something to happen, well, we put in place behaviors that make it happen. In an experiment, a psychologist made teachers believe that some children chosen at random were very intelligent. What happened was that at the end of the year, the selected children were really more intelligent than the others. Why is that? Because the teachers to whom a positive prejudice had been induced will have implemented behaviors that have promoted the development of skill more on children labeled as intelligent. Negative stereotypes instead have terrifying consequences because they lead victims to have less self-esteem and so less ambitions and less confidence in others. It is important to stress that sometimes stereotypes are rooted in us without being aware of them. But what can we do to reduce prejudice? We can start with understanding the mechanism behind the prejudice. Consider with modesty our reasoning skills because, as we see, it has several limits. Getting closer with new culture, getting in touch with people we consider different from us. And when we realize we have a bias, well, try to question it. You know what the new scientific research says? That there is a strong correlation between intelligence and prejudice. So people with less prejudice have a higher general intelligence, a higher capacity for abstract reasoning. They're more empathic and then they can more accurately understand the behaviors and intention of others. So, can we be less racist, homophobic, and misogynistic? Yes, if we use our intelligence.